Today we're continuing our series on hospice care for pets. This is Sally Morgan, physical therapist, craniosacral therapist, and Tellington T-Touch practitioner for animals and people. This is Tristan, and he's a Corgi. So today we're going to talk about rabbits, and I'm just reminded actually when I was looking at some notes here of another dog hospice story, which I will share because there's many important things in that story as well. But today we're going to talk about rabbits. I had rabbits for over 35 years. I had, at the time, 6 to 8 rabbits and sometimes 1 rabbit and 2 rabbits. So I know a lot about bunnies, and I have to say when I first got my bunnies, there was not much information available about bunnies, and including how long they live, because rabbits up until that point were not really kept much as pets. They were considered livestock and something we would eat. So I had pet bunnies, and my beloved rabbit Leo, she was a girl bunny, and I named them all after my friends when my bunny Agatha had bunnies, which is actually a complicated process. It's not, that story about rabbits making millions of rabbits is just not true. So I had these 4 bunnies, and Leo was the only bunny that got a boy's name, and she was a girl bunny, but she was also a Leo astrologically. And I like to say that she was like a lion in a lot of ways because she had a very fierce spirit, and she would open her mouth to yawn, and these giant rabbit teeth like ah, and she really looked like a lion roaring. The other bunnies never opened their mouths so wide when they yawned. And as you may know already, because, and I wrote about this in my book, which is right there, Dances of the Heart, Connecting with Animals, because I didn't have dogs at the time or a horse, I just treated my rabbit like a dog. And so she learned to play catch and to come and to sit up and to lay down. And she used to do this thing called Super Bunny, where I would support her and stretched out in my arms and walk her around the room like she was Super Bunny flying. So I had Leo Bunny for a long time. I lived in 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5, like 6 different places before Leo Bunny and I came to live at the boarding school. And then I met my ex-husband there, and we got an apartment together there at the school when we got married, which was really a huge house. And Leo Bunny was living there with her beloved friend Lily Bunny, and we got one more Mr. Bunny at some point, who was the last bunny I had, and his name was Rudolph, but mostly he was called Bunny Berkowitz. I don't know why. But anyway, Leo Bunny was getting to be quite old for a bunny, but there's no way to really tell. She was a whitish bunny. She was Siamese cat colored, so there wasn't any gray on her face or anything that I could see that was visibly a sign of aging. Like cats, bunnies don't get too much arthritis when they're old. And she had plenty of exercise running around Western Maine mountains. Oh, going to be cold up there in the next couple days. So Leo Bunny would hop around the living room and play with her friend Leo, who she shared a cage with. She loved Lily Bunny more than anything in the world, and the two of them would hop around the house and have fun together. And there was a time when I noticed that Leo Bunny wasn't eating much, and she was sitting very quietly next to Lily, and Lily was kissing her more than normal, and she just didn't look well. But her poopies were normal. With bunnies, you know, it can be a life-threatening emergency if they get diarrhea. And I didn't even know a bunny vet in that area. I was still driving from Berkshire County out here like an hour and a half to bring my rabbits to the exotic vet around here, who is actually still in practice and still a really good rabbit vet. He's getting old though. Anyway, I didn't have a vet, so, and my bunnies were healthy. I fed them really well. One thing people don't know is that rabbits can't eat iceberg lettuce. There is an enzyme that they are missing that makes it so they can't digest it. And so, of course, back in the days when we all ate iceberg lettuce, you fed it to the rabbit. And of course, like horses eating things like acorns and oak leaves, you know, it's fatal in a big dose, but you might not notice that they're not doing well when they just eat a little bit. So I never gave my rabbits iceberg lettuce, so they were pretty healthy. They had a pretty wide variety of diet, and we kept them out and about. But Leo just started to look emotionally depressed. And really, with a rabbit, it's hard to even talk about hospice care for bunnies, because bunnies go quickly when they go. It's not like you're going to be sitting with them for more than a 2-day period generally. So Leo, like I said, her bowel and bladder seemed fine. She was eating, but not that much. I had to cut her carrots up a little more for her to be interested in them so that they had a little bit more carrot juice on the outside. And Lily was very attentive to her, so I knew something was going on. And then one morning when I got up, she was laying on her side in the cage. Her eyes were popping out, and she was struggling to breathe. My ex-husband had already gone off to teach his classes. We didn't have cell phones invented yet. This is going way back. And I had a class later that day, but there was nothing I could do. I phoned the dean of students and said that my rabbit was looking very poorly, and that I was going to try to get her to a vet, and that I would try to be there for my class, but if not, please find somebody to fill in, because at a boarding school you don't have substitutes. So you have to find somebody who has a free period and send them into your room. And in fact, I think Jack taught my 2 classes that day, and maybe even the next day, because this was a devastating thing for me. So I put Leo in the car, and she was just really struggling. She had almost no heart rate, almost no pulse, and I didn't know what to do. I mean, I was driving all over the place. I had found one vet that was there who would look at a rabbit at 8 in the morning. And I drove right to his office. He wasn't even open yet. He was just open for me. Wonderful guy. I still to this day thank the heavens for this wonderful vet. And I sat in his waiting room with Leo in a little box on my lap, and he came out and he said, "This rabbit is going. She is not going to be here much longer, and she's very uncomfortable." And I said, "I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do." And he said, "Let me just give her a sedative, and that will probably be the end for her, because she's really suffering right now, and I don't think this is a good thing for her." So I said, "Fine, give her the sedative." And he came out and gave her the shot, and within seconds she just went limp. And that was the end of my bunny. And I was an emotional wreck. I mean, this vet, I don't know any vet really who is as great as this guy was that day. There was no one in the office except me and him, and he was a pretty young guy, and I just exploded in tears and emotional loss. I had had that rabbit for 10 years, which was longer than anyone I knew had had a rabbit. I didn't know very many people with rabbits. Some of the bunny guys I'd go to and the 4-H kids I bought my rabbits from would tell me, these rabbits live outside for a lot of these people and in sheds. This rabbit had been an indoor bunny. She was a Netherland dwarf, so she was a little bunny and shouldn't have been living outside in a shed or anything that didn't have good heat. And I just thought back how many tumultuous years of my life I had spent with this rabbit. I was just so devastated. And then it was a spring day, like March, and just cold and rainy and awful. And this guy got me a glass of water and hugged me and sat with me until I was okay to drive home. And it was only about 5 miles, but I was not in a good place. And he said, "Well, what are you going to do? Do you want me to keep her?" And I said, no, we'll bury her somewhere. And of course, you can't just bury a rabbit somewhere if you don't own the property. We were at a boarding school, so that was a big issue. And I wanted to put her somewhere where her grave would never be disturbed, but where I could also visit. So that was a whole process. Discussing with Jack, he canceled his sport that day, and so did I, because when you're at a boarding school, you're running from 8 in the morning till midnight, never a break, hardly even to eat. So we had some cancellations, and there's a great poem called "On Death of a Hare" by William Cowper, which is also called Cooper. It's Cowper. It's a couple of pages long. He kept pet rabbits, like so many Victorians, including Beatrice Potter. And so he wrote this beautiful tribute when his bunny passed. And so Jack and I don't even know, did we have a shovel? We might have borrowed one from one of the neighbors, or maybe we were using hand trowels. And we found a private place on the edge of the campus to bury this rabbit and read this poem. And I made a beautiful place in a box for her with flowers and all the things that rabbits like to eat. And, I had her with me for probably 10 hours before we were able to really put her in the ground. And now I wish I had kept her even longer because I know so much more. But we certainly let Lily out of her cage and let her come over and sniff Leo. And, you know, Lily was just very subdued and quiet. These rabbits were tremendous friends, and she really understood the loss. And, you know, it was really only because of Lily's behavior that I knew that Leo was struggling. And so we ended up burying her and reading this wonderful poem, which I then read for all of my rabbits when they died after that. And it was a very, very sad day. And bunnies are very unusual animals. They have a lot more dog and cat-like qualities than people give them credit for. And like any of our animals in our lives, I had spent so many years of turmoil and transition in my younger years, in my 20s, with this rabbit in my life. I mean, she was a constant, just like our dogs are and our cats are, and certainly our horses over 30 years. And so the loss was really tremendous for me and emotional because I had so many things wrapped up in this rabbit. And as is often the case for us when we lose a pet, I was really busy at this boarding school job. I did not have enough time to spend with my pets, with the people in my life, with my horse. And so I felt tremendous guilt for not giving Leo a better quality of life, although, you know, up until she passed, I didn't know any rabbits who had had a better life than she did. She was able to walk on a leash. We let her hop all over the neighborhood. She used to go with me down to Smith College when I was doing grad work and hop around the lawns while I was reading. And I smuggled her into the library quite a few times. And this rabbit went a lot of places with me. And we had a really long and interesting life together. So I had to come to terms with the fact that we all die, and, you know, the best thing I could do is what I did, which is be with her in the end and allow Lily time to say goodbye to her and to give her a funeral with respect. And, you know, these are the things that we don't often think about when we have our animals. What will we do when the time comes? And if all you take away from this little series on hospice care is deciding that you'll start asking people, what did you do? Where did you take your dog? Did you put him in the yard? Did you take him for cremation? Did you leave him at the vet? And, you know, what did you do for the first couple days? And we're going to talk more about some of these topics as we continue this series. But, you know, the thing is, when you're doing hospice care for a rabbit, it really is a very limited time because they're such a small animal. By the time they have something so wrong with them that they are passing away soon, they are really pretty far gone. And other than things like, you know, teeth that are growing out of control, or sometimes certain kinds of respiratory things, once a rabbit's sick, they don't really recover. So, you know, but you still have to think about hospice type care for even a bunny. I was not going to put her down, and I still didn't. I asked him just to give her a tranquilizer because she was in so much respiratory distress, and that was enough to help her over the bridge in a gentle way. And, you know, what a wonderful thing for this vet to have been there for me in that time. I mean, my poor ex-husband, he was still my husband then, and he was up teaching classes and running around and trying to, you know, put fires out so that I could have time with my rabbit. So he couldn't spend time with me. And it was a very difficult time. But one of the things someone wrote, I think on Facebook, about their Corgi was that, you know, every vet has an office where you go with your pet for those last moments. And so she put a table outside the door of that room with a little candle, an LED one, and then a little poem, like a sign framed, that says, you know, when someone is in this room and the light is on, they are saying goodbye to a beloved pet. Please be respectful and, you know, try to keep things, you know, quiet in the waiting room if it's near that door. And just be aware that when someone leaves this room, they've said goodbye to a loved one. And that was such a wonderful idea, and such a wonderful tribute to their animal that passed. And I don't think this vet is in practice down there anymore. And we were just out in his waiting room. I never even went into his office. But it is a really kind thing to do, to put something like that at your vet's office so that when somebody is grieving over the loss of a pet and they may be carrying out their animal in their arms when they leave, it's good for other people around to understand that what's going on, and they don't jump up and, you know, have their dog out of control or their children screaming when they're waiting for their turn. And many vets do that sort of thing at specific times in the day just to minimize some of that. But what a wonderful tribute that person came up with, and I've suggested it to many vets around here who have said, what a great idea. So thankfully, Leo Bunny passed fairly quickly, and it wasn't really a matter of hospice care. It wasn't a matter of me trying to keep her pain-free and fed and watered while she was struggling through an illness, but it still is an important reminder of making plans ahead of time, because with a rabbit, and sometimes even with cats and dogs, they go pretty quickly and you don't know exactly what you're going to do. So it's nice to have some thoughts in place, if not an actual plan, so that you know how you're going to proceed and you've got friends on speed dial to help you. Oh, Jim, you are so welcome. I mean, it's a very difficult subject, but you know, people really need to have permission to talk about these things. And I encourage you guys to go to my interviewee's website, spiritsinTransition.org. There are plenty of resources there, including documents and information to help you with the process of hospice for your pets. And my next rabbit, Lily, she died shortly after Leo, I think maybe 2 months later, even though she was a much younger rabbit. I really believe that sometimes animals can die of grief just like people can, and you know, she couldn't really be with the other rabbit I had. He was a neutered male and she was unspayed and she was old, and they licked each other through their little bunny enclosures, but you know, she never loved that bunny the way she loved Leo. And she just she had some more health problems because she did not come from a good backyard bunny breeder like Leo, me, and a guy that I had brought her mother to make baby bunnies. Lily came from the pet store, and she came with some problems along the way, so she just didn't last as long, and it was a big surprise to me when she went so quickly after Leo. But we were able to, Jack and I were able to meet at the same place and dig a hole for Lily next to Leo and leave them near each other at the end, which can sometimes be really important. And I feel sad that I don't have them at a yard, at a house where I live, but I didn't have a house then. I didn't have a yard then. And in fact, the next rabbit, the final rabbit I had, he's buried in the backyard of my ex-husband's house, right near here, because I knew he would never sell that house, and he had 7 or 8 acres, so it was pretty easy to find a good spot. And that rabbit's still there with a little bunny marker over his area, and he has tons of wildflowers growing on him, and he's happy over there. So thanks for joining us today for this talk about rabbits, and I will be back Thursday. I'm supposed to have jury duty, but I don't think they're going to call me. If they do, I'm going to have to go in and sit there for a few hours, which means I won't be able to do this because I think we have to report at like 7:45. But if I don't have jury duty, which I'll know tomorrow night, we will be back on Thursday morning. And if I certainly will be back here on Friday with a look at some of the bigger topics. I think we're going to talk about this other dog who was on hospice care for many days, and some of the remarkable things that happened with the other pets in the house during that process. So we will see you then. Thanks for joining us today. The sun is shining, although it's cold. Right, Biscuit? And my friend got the dead tree out of my backyard with a little chainsaw the other day. It was a miracle. My yard is 3 times as big. But we were all sad Tristan didn't run around and enjoy the extra space. He just trotted around marking the area. Like any dog. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Have a good day. We'll see you either Thursday and definitely Friday.